Whew, it is hot in here today, you guys. Holy Hannah. I would turn the air conditioning on, but it's noisy. So for you, I'm not going to. Okay, my loves, I am hopping on here today with what I think maybe is going to be a bit of a quickie. What I wanted to talk to you about is spiritual lineage and the importance of actually following multiple spiritual lineages instead of just sticking to one. So if that's of interest to you, please hang out. I would love to chat with you and jam with you on this, and I'm excited to get started. For those of you that are super new to my channel, my name is Jaie. I'm the erotic and tantric alchemist. This channel is really super close to my heart. It's a fusion of basically everything that I've learned from a variety of different lineages that I'm now associated with, which is fun because that's what we're going to talk about today. So we go through esoteric, we go through occult, we go through modern, we go through neuroscience. Really, we fuse everything together, whether it's ancient or modern. We mix it all together, and then I teach you how to ground it in 3D reality. Because the truth is, in the 21st century, what is the point of having spirituality if you can't use it to make meaningful changes in your life? It's really hard, in my opinion, to be spiritual if you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. So on this channel, you get both. We're going to talk about spirituality and we're going to talk about grounding it in 3D reality so you can actually meaningfully create your dream life. Cool. If you are curious to go a little bit deeper with me, I post once a week. If you're curious to go deeper with me, then you can also check out my Facebook group. It's obviously free because it's a Facebook group, and it is called the Sex Lab. I will put a link in the description down below for you. You definitely want to check out those links. It's a whole treasure trove of great information. There's lots in there, so definitely check that out. But if you want to see me more than once a week, you want to ask me questions, you want to hang out with my community of like-minded souls, then the Facebook group is where you're going to want to do that. So go ahead and join that down below. Okay, let's talk about spirituality and about lineage. The first thing, and you guys will see I have a video on this channel talking about the importance of lineage. Lineage is really important, you guys. I'll put the link for that one in the description down below as well. Why is lineage so important? I'll let you watch that video. I did it with my partner, Cian and I. But I want just to summarize here that lineage is important because these are tried and tested and true methods for spiritual awakening. Also, lineage generally means that there's a system and a process in place to hold you while you wake up, to hold you through any dark nights that might come up, any questions you might have, any identity crises that you might have. Lots of people that go on the spiritual journey do not realize how profound of an experience it actually is. And when you're dealing with an organization that has lineage, they have systems and structures in place to help hold you through that so that you can ascend safely and so that you don't inadvertently become a danger to yourself or others along the way. We'll just put it as simply as that. They've got, thousands and thousands of years of practice in some cases, making sure that you ascend safely and at a right speed, and that you have sometimes a teacher or even sometimes an entire community or sangha that is going to hold you through on top of the teachings and the routines through your awakening process. So it's really important for you to allow yourself to look into a lineage that aligns with you. And again, I've got tips on that in the video that you can watch after this one. Link is down below. So now that we've talked a little bit briefly about lineage, the question then becomes, if lineage is so important, why can't I just pick one? Isn't that what all the former masters have done? So now it's like, yes, you need lineage because they know what they're doing, but you don't just want one, but all of the ones that are in lineage say you only want one. So it can seem like I'm contradicting myself. Let me tell you why. What happens before we had globalization is that lineages ended up being based usually on a specific country, okay, or a specific culture is probably more accurate to say. For example, you guys know I talk about sex magic a lot on this YouTube channel, and sex magic actually originated from what I can pull together in ancient Egypt. And then what we now call sex magic or tantra. And so what happened is sex magic came up through ancient Egypt and then ended up having people that took it east to become eventually a portion of tantra and west to become eventually a portion of sex magic. Now what's interesting here when we look at both lineages is we see that the same science, the same energy, the same principles actually have changed quite substantially based on the cultural filters that they are seen through. So let's, for example, take Tantra. In white Tantra, which is the original Tantra, red Tantra you would see more in the neo-tantra communities, but original Tantra you would call white Tantra. They took spiritual or sex magic, working with sexual energy and the practices that are involved with working with sexual energy, and they took it and they applied it to the goals of the Tantra that already existed. Now, Tantra, and in that culture, when we look at like Tibet as an example, had some very specific views around what spirituality was meant to be. It was a very awakened community. Everything in their life was designed towards spiritual ascension. It was a vital part of their culture. They also had specific views around, for example, women's rights, women's movements, and expectations around that. And so in some cases, when you go back into the ancient texts, you can actually see evidence of these happenings. You can see evidence of how working with sexual energy got pulled into Tantra, and it's now used as a means of spiritual awakening, exclusively spiritual awakening at that time. It also sometimes had some questionable female-based practices and definitely didn't give credit to the female consorts that were working with their male counterparts. Now, if we take that same exact set of principles and exact same practices and we move them west into sex magic, then they were taken on by the ceremonial magic crew. You can look into like Aleister Crowley and, the Hermetics and all that type of stuff. It came up and kind of bubbled up through that lineage. And this lineage, being a little bit more modern, didn't have a lot of the same spiritual practices. They did. Obviously magic is a very spiritual process, but it wasn't your entire life the way that it was in Tibet. And so as a result, this is where we see sex magic being used and other magic actually more for primarily environmental 3D realm impact. The reason we see that is because, as I mentioned earlier in my intro today, they saw that being spiritual, if you couldn't be fed, wasn't any good. In Tibet, we have the culture of a monastic lifestyle. In the West, that wasn't common. So you needed to know where your meal was going to come. You couldn't just be spiritual and go stay in a monastery. You needed to be able to provide for yourself. And so we see these differences where in Tibet, the sexual energy, the sexual work ended up fusing up into Tantra as a means of spiritual evolution and connecting and communing with God, source, universe, divine oneness, whatever word you prefer. They all work, right? Now in the West, they were using it primarily as a first level of material gain, not in a bad way, but just being able to get yourself stable, being able to get yourself so you have a roof over your head, so you have food coming in, and then they used it as a means of spiritual evolution. So again, you can see we've got some cultural differences here. And I use this example to point why looking at multiple lineages is so important, because I see so many people that take just one lineage, for example, let's say Tantra and the Tibetan lineage, and they take that as present day gospel. But then with that, you're also taking all of the cultural norms, all of the cultural dogma, expectations, and societal evolution that hasn't actually evolved over time because they've kept it very tightly controlled. So you're basically dropping yourself into the cultural norms of, the world 1,000 or 2,000 years ago. That's not super helpful for modern society. But if that's the only lens, the only filter with which you're seeing this information, you're going to believe it to be true, of course, right? And then when we look at, for example, something modern like sex magic, they also have their filters, they also have their lenses. And those won't be highlighted for you until you can see another lineage. So when we bring these lineages together, when we're able to look at the source content, okay, what are the practices? And then we're able to see, okay, because I have this root, I can see the similarities between the two practices and I can see the differences. We see the same thing happening with Zen Buddhism, which is also a Buddhist line similar to Tantra, although it's ascetic, so there's no sex magic in that one. But even still, you can see that they evolved around the same time. That in mind, they have their own cultural expectations. For example, when we look at Tantra is very focused on, again, spiritual evolution, but also living in the 3D realm. You don't go off to the cave necessarily. In Zen Buddhism, it's a strictly aesthetic discipline. You sit down, you shut up, and you meditate. They don't recognize deities. Tantra recognizes deities. So again, you can see the same technology, let's say in this case meditation, the same meditative technology changing from sex magic to Tibetan Tantra to, let's say, Zen Buddhism. And you can even go even further if you wanted to go into a lineage that's got shamanic roots. Shamanism also focuses on altered states of consciousness. They also focus on meditative practices, but their means and focus and intention of meditating is very different. So if we look at, for example, the core technology of meditation, now we look at these 4 different lineages, and what we can see is the things that are similar, that being the core root technology, and the things that are different, which is basically, we can call it like cultural additions, and some people like to call it window dressing. Now, when we see that, the beauty here is that, guys, we get to choose. So I'm not saying throw that stuff out, but it empowers you to choose what beliefs are actually in alignment with my values. Another challenge that I see is that so many times people get really far down a lineage and then they find that they don't agree with the way that women are treated, or they don't agree with the purpose or the intent or some of the methodologies at the higher level, and they throw the practice out completely. And working with different lineages alleviates you from that, because you know it's not actually the technology that isn't working for you, it is just a specific belief system, and maybe you don't even throw out the community. Because if you understand, I like this community, I like this teacher, I like this lineage, I just don't really believe or agree with this one belief system or this one piece of cultural information, then you have the luxury of being able to consciously choose. And you know, this channel is all around conscious choice for the betterment of all beings, yourself and those around you included. So to summarize here, it's so important. A lineage, number 1. If you don't have lineage, please go and find a lineage that aligns with your beliefs and with your values as best as you can. And then once you're comfortable and you're grounded there, be willing to look for opposing views from other lineages. Be willing to look for the technology that you see in other lineages, whether that be shamanistic or different types of Buddhism or something, you know, sex magic or something completely different. There's no shortage of options in this world, and in the 3D world of globalization where everything is super connected, it has never been more accessible for you to try on different lineages, take the pieces that work for you, and empower yourselves to leave the cultural stuff that is no longer in alignment. Okay. Thank you guys so much for being here. I can't tell you how much I love you. I'll remind you really quickly that every time you like, share, comment, anything on this video, it really helps other people who need this information to find it just like you did. So please take a couple minutes of your time, share this with someone you love, give me a comment. I would love to know if you're involved with lineage, what your thoughts are on lineage, if you have questions, or any part of this that was particularly interesting to you. And of course, please do hit the subscribe button. I release videos just like this every single Sunday. At 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, just Pacific Time, not Pacific Standard Time. So go ahead and hit subscribe, let me know how this landed, and I will see you on your iPhone and or mobile device and or laptop next week. I love you so much, thank you. Bye guys.